actually my favorite chapter from the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence. So I'm so happy that you are joining me today to read from what is my favorite chapter of this book, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're in the room, just give us a wave. Hi, Portia. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you are on Facebook, say hello as well. I'm talking to two cameras today, so I want to address everyone who's in the room. I really appreciate you guys coming together with me again this week in our 5th week of reading from the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence. This is, as I was saying before, one of my favorite chapters that I'm reading from today. So I'm really excited to share this chapter particularly with you. It's really been my pleasure to come to you every week, and I know that we are all enduring a time that is really challenging. It's very new for all of us, and so we're all able at this point to really dig into what we love, right? We're at home, we are spending more time with our families and talking to our friends virtually, but still able to connect. So it's really been my pleasure to connect with you every week on a virtual level, sharing the love of reading and literature. And before we dig into the book, I do want to take a moment just to thank our healthcare workers and our sanitation workers, our grocery workers, the people who are making this time a time that's bearable for all of us. We are all dealing with just a time of quarantine. We're in the house, and so this is a really challenging time, but we are really grateful for the people who are putting their lives on the line every day to make sure that our community is safe, that our health is safe, or that our health is protected. So I just have to say thank you so very much to our healthcare workers and our grocery workers, our sanitation workers, the people who are picking up our trash, the people who are there on the front lines, making sure that we are all safe. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of the hearts of the Juris P. Prudence team. Thank you. Now let's get started. So I'm going to tell you why this is my favorite chapter. Chapter 5 is my favorite chapter from the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence. In Chapter 5, Juris P. Prudence gets her best friends together, and you can see them in the back of me. They join me every week, Maddie, Sophie, and Izzy. And they are coming together this week for the very first time to discuss getting kids the right to vote. So if you've been joining us every week, you will know that Juris P. Prudence is trying to change the law so that kids have the right to vote, okay? And so Juris P. Prudence, has convinced her best friend, Sophie, to help her get the right to vote, to help her change the law so that kids can vote. So Sophie has said yes to this, and now Juris P. Prudence has to convince her other friends, Izzy and Maddie, to help them as well. So Izzy, Maddie, Sophie, and JP, they all met in law school. Remember, they're 11-year-old lawyers. They went to law school at 5 years old, and they are now trying to change the law. There is a mayor who's running for re-election. Juris P. Prudence knows that he doesn't like kids, and she's trying to change the law so that he does not get reelected. And she knows this is going to be really hard. But Chapter 5, she gets everyone together for the first time. She has a meeting at her house. And we're going to go into this meeting in just a few minutes. We're going to see what JP says to her friends, because Izzy and Maddie, they don't know yet. They don't know that JP is about to ask them to help her change the law, right? But they're her best friends, and she thinks they're going to help her. But what this chapter shows about Juris P. Prudence is that she is very persistent. She's very determined. When she has a goal, she works very hard to achieve it. And that's what I love most about this chapter, is that you can see Juris P. Prudence's character. You can also see her best friends. And I really enjoyed writing about her friends because they reminded me of my own friends and the personalities of my own friends. What Juris P. Prudence understands is that you have to have a team to make any dream come true. She understands that dream work makes the team work, or what teamwork makes the dream work, and that's exactly what she wants to do. She wants to make the dream work, okay? Another part of this chapter that I really love is the exchange between Juris P. Prudence and her grandfather. And in this exchange, you will see how special Juris P. Prudence's grandfather is to her, and how special that she is to him, and how important education is to both of them, okay? So let's dig into this chapter. There, you'll understand the meaning of the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence after this chapter. So if you have the book at home, you can read along we're on page 33, chapter 5. So you can read along in your own book at home, okay? And if you don't have the book, you can just listen carefully. There is a chapter supplement. If you have subscribed to our newsletter, you will receive the chapter supplement every week where we ask you questions about the previous week's reading, okay? So make sure you go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter. You can get that subscription link. We'll leave it in the comments after the reading, and you can subscribe to get fun activities and updates on our future readings. All right, let's jump in. By Friday, our kitchen was filled with goodies. After trying his best to stay away from them for 2 days, my grandfather finally gave in and snuck into the chocolate chip cookies on Thursday evening. Granny caught him and gave him a scowl. "No more for you, sir. Those are for JP and my gals." Granny called Sophie, Izzy, and Maddie her gals. Izzy was the first to arrive at my house on Friday afternoon. "Izzy," I shouted as I opened the door. I was always surprised to see the latest ensemble that Izzy would be wearing. Izzy never wore the same outfit twice. To her, the worst thing that anyone could do was to be seen wearing the same outfit twice. What's more, she wore clothes that no one wore because no one could find Izzy's clothes in regular stores. Izzy ordered all of her clothes from foreign countries, or she made them herself. Today, Izzy was wearing her jet black hair in a bun that sat on the top of her head. She had recently dyed her bangs in streaks of red, yellow, blue, orange, and green, adding to her already unique style. Her white ruffled blouse looked as though she had borrowed it from the Queen of the United Kingdom. But I had no idea where she had found her very exotic jeans. Her neon yellow matching jeans and matching tennis shoes were so bright that they almost required sunglasses to look at them. "Is that my Isabel?" I heard Granny ask from the kitchen. "Come in, honey. I made your favorite cookies." "Izzy, it's because of you that Granny didn't let me into these cookies. I'd be mad if she was saving these for anyone but you." I heard Granddaddy come downstairs to the kitchen. "Hey, Granny and Granddaddy, I've been waiting all day for these cookies." Izzy loved my grandparents. She didn't know her biological parents or grandparents because as a baby, Izzy had been adopted by her 2 dads. Her dad's parents died before she was born, so she never had a chance to meet them. Izzy was from a very poor town in South Korea. Her dads brought her back to the United States as soon as she was born. Like Sophie, I met Izzy in the KLA law program when I was 5 years old. When I first met Izzy, she was doodling in her drawing pad. Izzy was the most talented artist that I knew. It always surprised me that she was a lawyer because her first love was art. Maybe that's why she didn't get the best grades in law school. In our law program, Izzy was more interested in sketching out her next sculpture than she was studying the Constitution. Surprisingly, Izzy won the award for the best student investigator. Izzy could find out information on almost anything, and that's why I needed her on my team. If there was something about Sylvester that we didn't know, Izzy would find it. As Izzy was busy chatting with my grandparents, I heard Maddie walk to the door. "Maddie's here," I shouted. Maddie had been to my house 1,000 times, but she always looked super confused when she was looking for my door. I could understand her confusion because my neighborhood consisted of blocks of brick row homes that all looked identical. Maddie, however, didn't only seem confused finding my house. Every time I saw Maddie, she was frazzled about something. Today, Maddie's red spiral curls were sprawled all over her head. Her large black frame glasses were falling off, and her half-open book bag was leaking sheets of paper. The gusty wind didn't help Maddie's composure. I decided to go outside and offer my friend a hand. "Madeline Rosenfeld, you look like you need some help." Thanks, JP, Maddie responded, sounding defeated. Let's get into your house. I'm freezing. It's 37 degrees right now, and the wind chill is 29 degrees. The rate of the wind speed will be increasing at a velocity of 10 miles per hour this afternoon. Maddie was a math and science genius. She was another friend who I never would have expected to become a lawyer. Yet, Maddie loved using numbers to make her legal arguments. Because of her gift with numbers, she was a great lawyer. When I met Maddie, I noticed her in the corner of the cafeteria, sitting at lunch by herself. She was facing the cafeteria wall, and her bright red hair blended in with the red cafeteria mural. On the table in front of her sat a small notebook, a ruler, and 2 pencils. Maddie's head was bent towards her notebook, and her eyes were squinted, as if she were trying to focus her vision on something. I approached Maddie to ask her if she wanted to sit with Sophie, Izzy, and me. Sophie, Izzy, and I had been eating together every day since our first day of law school. Sophie and Izzy, there's a girl from the law school sitting by herself. Let's go ask her if she wants to sit with us, I suggested. Sophie and Izzy followed me over to Maddie. Hi, I'm Juris, but people call me JP. These are my 2 best friends, Sophie and Izzy. We were just wondering if you'd like to sit with us. Maddie was still squinting off into space. I noticed she was not eating her lunch. She was drawing some complicated figure surrounded by numbers and strange lines. Maddie finally looked up at me. Nice to make your acquaintance, JP. I'm working on my newest patent, but it would give me great pleasure to sit with you and your friends. I later learned that a patent was something that inventors got in order to protect their ideas from being stolen. Having a patent made someone's idea a piece of property, called intellectual property. Maddie was a patent genius, the master of intellectual property law. Maddie stood up and walked to our table. She towered over Izzy, Sophie, and me. Her curly red hair gave her an extra inch of height on her already tall and slender frame. Maddie's face was sprinkled with freckles. We walked to our lunch table that day, and ever since then, we have been best friends. Inside of my house, Granny was chatting with my friends about how she had gone apple picking last week and had used her apples to make her delicious treats. My friends listened closely as they sipped Granny's homemade apple cider. She had just taken a piece of apple pie out of the oven, and the aroma of fresh apples and cinnamon hit Maddie and me as I opened the door to my house. Is that my Madeline? I heard my grandmother shout from the kitchen. It is I, madam, Madeline responded. Granny came out of the kitchen with a piece of pie so hot that you could see the steam rising from it. Granny knew all of my friends' favorite desserts, and Maddie's was apple pie. Granny welcomed Maddie, handing her a piece of warm pie. Okay, guys, we have to get this meeting started ASAP. We don't have time to waste. Sophie's parents had given her permission to be involved in this project on the condition that she kept her grades up and always returned home by 5 p.m. Izzy and Maddie's parents had given them a 5:30 curfew, which didn't give us much time to discuss my plan. I led my friends to the basement, where Granddaddy had arranged 4 chairs around a dark brown table. Granddaddy was building a more elegant table for me, but it would take at least another week for him to finish. When everybody was seated, I pulled out my notebook, which had all of the notes that I had been taking for the past week. I walked towards my chalkboard, posted on the wall, and pulled out a piece of chalk from my pocket. Friends, we are here today because we have 2 goals. 1, to make sure that Sylvester Sullivan does not get reelected, and 2, making sure that kids have the right to vote. Kids 7 to 17 years old, that is. My friends looked up at me, listening attentively. Right to vote? Izzy asked in disbelief. Yes, the right to vote, I repeated. Sophie explained to Izzy and Maddie that Sylvester was horrible for children, and that the only way that his opponent, Marty Goodlittle, would win the election was if kids got the right to vote. Izzy and Maddie were obviously excited about the idea. How are we going to do this? Maddie asked. Maddie, I need you to work out the numbers. How many kids do we need to vote for Goodlittle so that Sylvester does not get reelected? Maddie rapidly punched some numbers into the calculator that always seemed to be glued to her hand. Based on my calculations, we will need 7,052 votes from kids who are 8 to 17 to win this election for Marty Goodlittle. Thanks, Maddie. But how are we going to do this, JP? Asked Izzy. She wanted more details on exactly how we plan to get kids the right to vote. Izzy was a master investigator. I knew that when Izzy asked a question, she already had brainstormed 50 questions that she planned on investigating. Her notepad was filled with red and purple writing scribbled all over it, and this confirmed my thoughts. Izzy's wheels were turning. We are going to have to use all of our knowledge, skills, and talents to make this happen. This is not going to be easy. We will face a number of challenges. Many people will tell us no. They will tell us that the law is that you have to be 18 years old to vote. They will tell us that we are too young to change the law. They will tell us that kids should not have the right to vote. Many kids and their parents will not support this, but we cannot give up. We cannot listen to the people that don't believe in us. As long as we believe in ourselves, nothing else matters. My speech got slower, and my friends knew that when I began speaking slowly, I was serious. Sophie interjected, "Ladies, we have to change the law, and we all know how hard that can be. It took several groups of Americans hundreds of years to get the right to vote. What we have to do is think creatively. We must convince people that this is important and explain why it is illegal if we don't have the right to vote. Of course we should have the right to vote. I mean, it's unconstitutional otherwise. I mean, equal protection means that everyone is equal under the law. We learned that in our constitutional law class," Maddie explained. "You're right, Maddie. Let's get down to business. We need a plan, and we need to make this plan work. Quick, fast, and in a hurry," I stated. My voice was speeding up. I wrote the words "to do" on my chalkboard. "Sophie, you are the best legal researcher out of all of us. You got an A+ in our legal research and writing class. You should be the one to come up with the argument for why kids should have the right to vote. You should be the one to research our argument as to why kids should have the right to vote. We'll help you. Is that okay?" "Yep," Sophie responded proudly. Sophie knew that her greatest strength was legal research. I wrote "Sophie, legal research" in big, bold letters on my chalkboard. "On to you, Izzy. You know that you can investigate absolutely anything. We need to know everything about Sly, and I mean everything." "You got it," Izzy asserted confidently. She stood up from her chair, walked over to me, and reached for my chalk. She wrote the word "Izzy, investigate everything" with 2 smiley faces. Izzy had to individualize everything with hearts and smiley faces. Izzy smiled and headed back to the table. "Okay, last but not least, our numbers whiz, Maddie. Maddie, we need you to keep an eye on the numbers. We need to know who supports us, how close we are to getting the support of the people from this community to help us change the law. Any numbers that we need to know, you need to give them to us, okay?" "Okay, got it." I could see Maddie intensely squinting through her glasses. She was already thinking of her first major calculation. "What about you, JP? What's your role in all of this?" Maddie asked. I thought long and hard about all of this. First of all, even though we all have our individual tasks, we are a team. We will help each other out in any way that we can. Everyone nodded in agreement. "You all know that I love public speaking." "Of course we know that," Sophie echoed. "You are the 3-time reigning champion of the KLA debate team." "Well," I continued, "eventually we will have to argue why kids should have the right to vote in front of a judge. I would like to be the one who makes that final argument. Is that okay with you?" "Fine with me, of course. No problem, JP." I had the support of my friends. "Thanks so much, guys. This means a lot to me. I'd also like to ask you one more thing." I looked at the clock on the table. We only had 5 more minutes before we had to wrap this meeting up. "If we're going to do this, I would like for us to be a law firm. That means that nothing that any of us does is less important than what another person does. We all have an equal say in what goes on here." I could see everyone's eyes lighting up. When we were in law school, We all wanted to start our own law firm. I guess no one ever told us we would start it at just 11 years old. JP, this is a great idea. I think that the law firm should be named after you. What about the JP firm? Sophie asked. I think we should call it JP and Associates, Maddie suggested. I love that name, Izzy remarked. It has a lot of spice. Okay, JP and Associates it is, I confirm with a sense of pride that I had not felt since law school. Thanks so much, team. Let's get rolling. I think that JP and Associates should meet every Friday here in the basement. How does that sound? I'll check with my parents, but I think that will work, Sophie responded. Same here, Izzy said. That should work for me, except for in a couple months it's my brother's bar mitzvah. My family and I will be pretty busy until then, but I will try my best to do all that I can to help, Maddie explained. Okay, that's awesome, Maddie. Let's plan to meet next Friday at 4 o'clock. Next Friday, 4 o'clock meeting, I wrote on the chalkboard. I will send everyone a reminder by email. Oh, and I guess I will see you at school. Everyone laughed. My friends packed up their belongings, and I walked them to the door. Sophie's driver was waiting outside to take her home. Maddie and Izzy were walking to the metro station. I waved goodbye to everybody as they left, standing in my doorway, proud as a peacock. I turned around to see my granddaddy sitting in his favorite chair, watching the evening news. How'd your meeting go, my little lawyer? My grandfather was from a small town called Kosciuszko, Mississippi. He had a deep southern accent. We started a law firm, Granddaddy, JP and Associates. We are going to take Sly Sullivan down and get kids the right to vote. JP and Associates? Well, ain't that something? Granddaddy smiled in amusement. You're doing a great thing, Juris. You know, you are a lucky gal. You received a good education, and that means more than anything in the world. When I was your age, I wasn't allowed to go to the schools that you now attend because of the color of my skin. It was a very different time back then, but it's because of lawyers, brave lawyers like yourself, that people of all colors and backgrounds have a fair chance to get an education and do anything in life. You and your friends can change the world, all because of a little thing called knowledge. I loved hearing my grandfather's story about when he was a child. They painted pictures of an unfamiliar world where the opportunities that I have today were non-existent. You know, Juris, your mother would be so proud of you. I turned the volume on the television down. My grandparents rarely talked about my mother. She died a few weeks after I was born, and I did not remember anything about her. My aunts and uncles told me that she died, but everyone in the family was so sad that when she died, everyone in the family was so sad that they took most of her pictures down and placed all of her belongings in boxes in our attic. I was always afraid to ask about my mother because I did not want to upset my grandparents. Every time someone spoke about my mother, I drank each of their words as if they provided water for an insatiable thirst. Your mother always wanted you to be a lawyer, but when she got married, she decided to devote her time to working and preparing to be a mom. Granddaddy's words made me wonder who my mother was. Was I like her? Did I look like her? Did I talk like her? Would she be proud of me? Did she like being a mom? She always wanted to go to law school. That's all she talked about. Law school this and law school that. She went to college in a little town called Charlottesville, down in Virginia. As soon as she finished college, she wanted to go to law school in that Charlottesville, but she decided to work at a law firm to get more experience before applying to law school. Before having you, she worked at the law firm of Baker and Phelps, and boy, did she love it. She would come home each day and tell us about all of the interesting people she would see in court and how she could not wait to be a real lawyer. I tried to picture the excitement that my mother must have felt working in a law firm. Did she feel as excited as I felt by having my own law firm? Every night, she would stay up until the wee hours of the morning to do research on her cases for the next day. She never seemed to get tired of it, Granddaddy continued. My mom reminded me a lot of myself. I could stay up all night researching a case that I was passionate about. Each morning, she would dress up in her black suit, and on the way out of the door, she would grab her pink leather briefcase, which had the research that she had done the night before. My grandfather explained that he and my grandmother searched the whole city for a pink briefcase because pink was my mother's favorite color. I smiled brightly because pink was also my favorite color. We couldn't really afford it, but your grandmother and I brought your mother that briefcase with the last dime of our paychecks right before she started that law firm job. We wanted your mother to feel like she was the best employee in the law firm. She never went anywhere without her briefcase, Granddaddy recalled. Why not? I asked curiously. She always told me and your grandmother that that briefcase made her feel like a real lawyer, and that made us so happy. Granddaddy's face showed his sadness as he recounted fond memories of my mother. Juris, hold on 1 second. I sat quietly in the living room, reflecting on what Granddaddy had told me about my mother. I would give anything that I had in the world just to be in my mother's presence for 10 minutes. Juris, I'd like you to have something. Granddaddy was standing in the archway of the living room holding a pink leather briefcase. On a small square silver tag hanging from the handle of the briefcase, the words J.P. Prudence were engraved. Joanne Parnell Prudence. Sometimes I would overhear my grandparents talking about Anne when they thought I was asleep. I wondered who Anne was for many years, and one day I finally got the courage to ask my grandmother who Anne was. She told me that Anne was my mother. Anne would have liked for you to have this. You are the lawyer that she always wanted to be. Granddaddy carefully handed me the briefcase, holding it as delicately as someone would hold a newborn baby. Granddaddy, I can't take this, I said, overwhelmed with emotion. Your grandmother and I have been waiting to give this to you, Juris, and we think that now is the time. I reached for the briefcase and placed it on my shoulder carefully. Carrying my mother's most prized possession made me feel closer to her. Graduating from law school did not make me feel like a lawyer. Even having my own law firm did not make me feel like a real lawyer. But something about this briefcase made me believe that I was actually a lawyer who could change the law. I guess I was more like my mother than I knew. Alrighty, listeners, we are now at the end of chapter 5, which is my favorite chapter. I just remember writing these words so vividly. I enjoyed giving a voice to the grandfather. He reminds me a lot of my grandfather. I remember giving a voice to all of JP's excitement. She is very, very excited because she now has the support of her friends and her family. So she is planning on changing the law. So she is now ready to get started. She is fired up and ready to go. She has her best friends. They're on her side. They have their roles, and they're not going to stop until their mission is completed. All right? So what I want you to do is think about a time when you had a goal that you really wanted to accomplish, and think about what you did, who you got to rally behind you to make that goal happen. So write about it this week. Think about all of the skills and all of the courage that you had to muster up to make that dream happen, because I think that those memories help us achieve the next set of goals that we have. All right? So everyone have a great week. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. Please stay safe out there. Please remember that we're all in this together. And please join me next Wednesday at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we dive into chapter 6 rather. All right, everyone, have a great afternoon.